Hello and welcome to Children's Books Ireland's New Voices Showcase for Culture Night 2020. New Voices is usually a really important part of the Children's Books Ireland annual international conference, which takes place each September. This year, however, is a little bit different. We're missing those of you who we would normally see at the conference, but we are really proud to bring these debut authors and illustrators to a much wider audience. If you're tuning in live, let us know where you're coming from. And if you are watching this video back, please share it as widely as possible so that these brilliant authors and illustrators can reach as broad an audience as we can get them to. We have got a brilliant selection of picture books, young adult fiction, writing, illustration, fiction and non-fiction, and we hope that you enjoy tonight's selection. If you want to buy any of the books, our friends at the Gutter Bookshop have made it really easy for you to do so. Check the link below for the New Voices section on Gutter, and any orders over €30 are free to post within Ireland. Adults who are watching, there's a little bit of bad language in some of the older titles, so if you're watching with children, use your discretion with that. If you want more recommendations of brilliant books, check out our guide, Books Make Things Better, a partnership initiative with the Arts Council for Culture Night. It is full of 123 authors, illustrators, translators from Ireland and 13 great Irish publishers. Get out and support them, either by buying through the Gutter Bookshop or picking them up in your local bookshop. Supporting artists is at the heart of what we do, and bringing brilliant books to children, particularly children who might not otherwise have access to them. If you can support our work, and if you really believe in what we do as much as we do, please consider signing up to become one of our leading lights. It's a brilliant community. We really appreciate the support of those of you who have signed up already. And thank you to all of you who have tuned in. Stay in touch with us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, signing up for our email newsletter, and following us on social media. For now, sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's New Voices panel.
Hi, I'm Ciara Smyth, the author of Falling in Love Montage. This is a story about Saoirse, who doesn't believe in love and doesn't believe in happy endings. So she decides that she will never get into a serious relationship. One of the reasons that she feels this way is because her mum has early onset dementia and doesn't really remember who Saoirse is. And there's a good chance that she'll inherit that condition. So she sort of feels like, what is the point of getting involved with people if you're just going to forget everyone that you love? But she meets Ruby, and Ruby is kind of so cute, she can't resist. So what's a girl to do? They start to have a relationship that is based on the romantic fun parts that you see in a montage of a rom-com, because Ruby is a massive rom-com fan. And I am also a massive rom-com fan. I think there are really valid criticisms to be made of the genre, but really good ones can help us think about, what our relationships mean to us and what love means to us. So when I decided I wanted to write a rom-com, there were a couple of things that were really important to me. And one of them was that it would be set in Ireland. Sometimes it can seem like YA is sort of dominated by UK and US voices, but we have some amazing YA authors in this country, like Deirdre Sullivan, Moira Filey-Doyle and Claire Hennessy, who write books set in this country, and that kind of really inspired me. And give me confidence to do that. The other thing was that I wanted to write a lesbian rom-com, because I don't think that we have a lot of those. And that's something that I would have really wanted to see growing up. So really this is a book for me and sort of young Irish teenagers like me. But I think that, people from other places can also enjoy the story.
Hi everyone, Jacqui Hurley here. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my new book. It's called Girls Play Too, and it tells the fairy tale sports stories of 25 of Ireland's best known sportswomen, their lives in sport and how each of them got to the very top of their game. Each story has been autographed by the athlete, and each one also comes with a unique illustration of them in action, which has been done by one of 5 female Irish illustrators as well. So just to give you a flavour of what the book is like, I'm going to read one of the stories. So this is Ellen Keane, a Paralympian. There's her story, and as you can see underneath, there's her autograph and a lovely illustration of her on the right. So here's Ellen's story. Once there was a girl called Ellen who was born without the lower part of her left arm. This made Ellen look different to other girls, but she never felt different. She called it her lucky fin. It was only as Ellen got older that she noticed people would sometimes stare at her, so she started wearing long sleeves to hide her arm. Ellen's dad knew the only place she felt really comfortable was in the swimming pool, so he entered her into a disability swimming competition in Lisburn when she was 7 years old. When she came home with 6 medals, they both knew Ellen had found her passion. Ellen represented Ireland for the first time when she was just 9 years old, winning 4 silver medals at a junior competition. By the time she was 11, she was training 5 mornings a week before school. One day while she was training for the Paralympics in 2008, Ellen suddenly got a sharp pain in her side. She was rushed to hospital and they realised she had burst her appendix. She couldn't train for 3 weeks and she was heartbroken to think she might have to wait 4 more years to become a Paralympian. Thankfully, Ellen recovered quickly and made history at the Beijing Paralympics as Ireland's youngest ever competitor at 13 years of age. Even though she had achieved her dream of becoming a Paralympian, Ellen was still hiding her arm and it was impacting her training. So after a difficult Paralympics in London in 2012, she decided it was time for the world to see the real Ellen. She removed the sleeves from her tops and said, "Let people stare." With her new attitude, life changed for Ellen when she won a bronze medal at the Paralympics in Rio in 2016. 2 years later, Ellen stood proudly on the podium in Dublin as she became a European champion. Instead of hiding her arm, Ellen used her profile to change the thinking around disabilities, asking people to be the person you needed when you were younger. Now, I love this story because I love Ellen's resilience. You know, it can't have been easy for her and everything that she overcame, but she did that and then became a European champion and a Paralympic bronze medalist. And it just, I suppose, in so many ways, this shows the power of the mind and what you can overcome. And I just love that her message is so strong for young girls, hers and so many of the others in the book. So if you have a young girl in your life that maybe wants to be the next Stephanie Roach or the next Natalia Coyle or the next Breach Corkery or the next Ellen Keane, now when you look around, they can do that. There's so many more opportunities for young girls. I wrote this book because I never had this book. I would have loved a book like this to read about my female sports stars, but it just wasn't there. This is the first ever compendium that's going to put all these stories together, and hopefully it goes a small way in inspiring the next generation. Maybe some of you are going to be the next Katie Taylors out there. Who knows? But if this book can do a small bit inspiring you on your sporting journey, then I'll be very happy. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi everyone, my name is Adiba Jaigirdar and I am the author of The Henna Wars. So The Henna Wars is about Nishat, who is Bangladeshi, she's Muslim and she is a lesbian. So at the beginning of the book she decides to come out to her parents, but it doesn't really go as she had expected it to go. They don't respond with, acceptance or rejection. It's just kind of silence. So she's trying to figure out what that means and how to deal with that. At the same time, she goes to a wedding of a distantly related cousin where she runs into an old friend called Flavia. Flavia is Brazilian, she's black, biracial, so her dad is white and Irish and her mom is black and Brazilian, and she is starting at her school. So Nishat knew Flavia when she was a kid in primary school, and at the time she had feelings for Flavia but she wasn't really aware of it. And now that Flavia is back, her feelings are kind of resurfacing. But when they get to school, they go to their business class where their teacher sets them the task of creating their own businesses for a transition year. So Nishat decides she's going to do a henna shop because henna is a big part of her culture and she has grown up with henna. Her grandmother is a henna artist and it's just something that is a big part of her life. But unfortunately, her crush Flavia, whose Brazilian culture does not include henna, she decides that she is also going to start a henna shop. So Nishat is a little bit annoyed about that. She tries to explain to Flavia, why it's not really appropriate for her to do henna. And Flavia doesn't really get it. So the book is about Nishat kind of dealing with the fallout of her parents' response to her coming out, along with her dealing with the feelings that she has for Flavia, but also the fact that Flavia is culturally appropriating Henna from her. So it follows these two teen girls as they're kind of battling it out with their henna businesses, and they're battling out their own feelings. So it is a very family-focused book. It's also about like friendships, about love, all different kinds of love. It has a lot of scenes of sisterhood, and it's, you know, all to do with queerness and love and Bangladeshi culture, which is, you know, a big part of my life as well. So if you decide to pick up The Henna Wars, I hope you enjoy reading it.
Hi, I'm Donn McClean. I'm a sports writer. I write on horse racing for the Sunday Times and the Irish Field. And I've written 4 racing autobiographies. I've ghostwritten them. I hadn't written any children's fiction until now. This is all to play for. It's a story about Anna, who is your typical 13-year-old girl who does what normal 13-year-old girls do. She goes to school, she lives at home with her mum and dad and her young brother Charlie. She plays Gaelic football, which is her main sport, and she is good. She's strong, and she's one of the key members of her football team in Mountbridge in Galway. But Anna suffers a tragic loss which completely changes her life and her whole world. When she is 12, her dad has an accident and is killed. So her world is turned upside down. She stops doing the things that she had done. She stops playing football, and then they end up moving house. So I guess the story is about sport, for sure. It's about Gaelic football, but it's also about the life of a 12-year-old, the trials and tribulations of normal life, of moving house, of moving football club, of getting to know new people, of moving school, of leaving her friends behind, and coping with all of that. And it's not easy. It's not easy for Anna, but she copes with it. Copes with different situations in different ways, and as we discover later on, she has a secret weapon which comes to her help, especially when things are at their most difficult. So it's a book that I've wanted to write for quite some time, and I'm really grateful to O'Brien Press for giving me the opportunity to do it, to Michael O'Brien and the whole O'Brien Press team, because I'm involved in sports myself, both playing and coaching, and we have 4 daughters, and they all do different sports. Not only Gaelic football is in there, but they also do hockey and golf and soccer. So it's great that young girls nowadays get to play lots of sport and have lots of options available to them. So this book explores that a little bit, but it's mainly about all the different aspects of life and growing up, and how difficult it is for 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-olds as they go about their business. To go on now as a sub, with 5 minutes to go in the rain, I wasn't sure that I would even be able to take my coat off. "Come on, Anna," said Stephen sharply. "Hurry up." I put in my gum shield and I managed to unzip my coat slowly with my wet fingers as the other subs looked at me, probably with a mixture of jealousy and relief. Jealousy that I'd been chosen in front of them to go on, relief that they didn't have to derobe and leave the semi-shelter of the dugout. "Ref!" shouted Stephen as he rolled his hands around to indicate a substitution. The ref blew his whistle and held up his hand to stop the Castlehearn goalkeeper before she kicked the ball out. "You're going on left half forward, okay?" I nodded. "Michelle!" Stephen shouted, and Shelley came trotting over towards us. Go on, Anna, said Stephen. Do your best. I went to touch hands with Shelley as we passed each other, me going on, she coming off. I thought it was what subs did, but Shelley didn't touch hands. She just ran straight past me. She didn't even look at me. Suit yourself, Shelley. I got into my position, left half forward, beside the number 5 from Castleharran. I looked at the Castleharran goalkeeper as she lined up her kick out. I looked beyond her goals, but there was nobody there. There was never anybody behind the opposition's goals. Nobody of note anyway. Not anymore.
Hi, I'm Sophie Kirtley, and this is my book, The Wild Way Home. The Wild Way Home is an adventure, and it's set partly in the Stone Age. It tells the story of a kid from now called Charlie Merrion, who meets a boy from the Stone Age. Now, The Wild Way Home is actually set in a forest, most of the story is. And this forest is based on a place where I used to play with my friends when I was growing up in Northern Ireland. The scene I'm going to read to you today takes place in this forest. And it starts off with Charlie and 2 of Charlie's friends, Lamont and Beaky. They also have a dog called Nero. The evening sun is warm on my face. Shutting my eyes, I stroke Nero's silky soft ears. I sigh. I really ought to go home. Check on Mum. See if I've got a brother yet, or a sister. I'm off, I say, standing up. See you tomorrow. For your birthday, sings Beaky. I can't wait. Do you think you'll finally get a phone, Charlie? Maybe, I say, crossing my fingers behind my back. Are we still camping out tomorrow night? asks Lamont. Of course we are, answers Beaky before I even have a chance to think about it. Nero wags his tail like he's in agreement. I pat Nero's black head. I guess it depends on the baby. My shrug turns into a little shiver of excitement. Maybe baby, grins Beaky, nudging me in the ribs. I grin back. I better go. I scramble to my feet. Bye! I yell over my shoulder as I turn and run back down through the clearing and onto the gravel path through the forest. Among the trees, the air tastes cool and shadowy. The branches on either side of the path lean in slightly, so it's dark like a tunnel. I can still hear the faint echo of Lamont and Beaky's laughter. A big clumsy bird flaps out of a tree so close to my head I duck. My foot skids out in front of me and I end up sitting on the path. The bird lands on a branch, beady eyes staring at me. It's a wood pigeon with feathers the colour of early morning sky, grey and pink and silver. I look down at the gravel I disturbed when I slipped. One small pale stone catches my eye. I pick it up and rub it on my shorts to clean it. It's whitish, smooth, about the size and shape of an almond. I stare at the dull gleam of the stone on my muddy palm, and I realise it's not a stone at all. It's a tooth. A little shiver tingles like a breath across my shoulder blades. A tooth, root and all. Wow, it's not small either. Must be from quite a decent-sized animal. A badger? A fox, maybe? Or a deer? I don't care if Beaky and Lamont will tease me about this. This tooth is definitely going in my collection. I've never found a tooth in Mandle Forest before. I get to my feet, pressing the tooth's pointy end into my fingertip. It leaves a little dimple there. I slide it into my pocket. I feel the weight of someone watching me. Lamont! Beaky! I call. It'd be just like them to sneak up on me, get revenge for not winning the game. But there's no one here. The wood pigeon in the tree ruffles his feathers noisily, and I nearly jump out of my skin. You scared me, I said as I gaze up at him. His feathers shimmer, swirling colours of oil on water. The wood pigeon stares back. Ooh, he says, his head cocked to one side. Ooh, ooh. I laugh. I'm Charlie Merrion, I reply, and the wood pigeon flaps off. Charlie Merrion, says a low voice from high in a tree behind me. A human voice, a voice I do not know. I run, faster than I've ever run before, because this time it's not a game.
My name is Una Woods, and I'm very excited to be one of the new voices for Children's Book Ireland 2020. This is my first picture book, Have You Seen the Dublin Vampire? And it is published by the O'Brien Press. I am an author and an illustrator from Dublin, and I grew up in Clontarf, very close to the Marina Crescent, which is the birthplace of Bram Stoker. So I always grew up with a fascination about vampires and the fact that the most famous vampire in the world was created in Dublin. I decided I'd love to write my own story about another Dublin vampire, so I am going to read it to you now. In an old part of Dublin, right down by the sea, there's a moon-shaped park with a creepy old tree. The Dublin vampire lives there. The vampire wakes up as the sun's going down. He hops on the ghost bus and rides into town. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? As he crosses the Liffey, the wind and rain whirl, and we hurry about in our own little worlds. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? In the dusty old library in Trinity College, he reads ancient books full of wisdom and knowledge. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? On Grafton Street, shoppers and buskers and crowds, all hustle and bustle and busy and loud. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? In the dead zoo, he hangs out with badgers and hares, a spotty giraffe and a huge polar bear. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? In the green, he says hi to the ducks and the swans as they fluff up their feathers and splash in the pond. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? In a cafe, he stops for a sweet cherry bun and a hot drop of tea at a table for one. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? The castle is lovely at this spooky hour, as his old friend the ghost waves hello from the tower. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? He loves Halloween when folks dress up like him, and fireworks explode with a boom, snap, fizz, zim. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? He watches the people in Temple Bar Square, who don't even notice that he's also there. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? At sunrise, the vampire heads back to his home, but everyone's busy with traffic and phones. Have you seen the Dublin vampire? So the next time you walk to the city at night, when Dublin is twinkling in silver moonlight, you might see the Dublin vampire. I hope you liked my story, and don't forget to look out for the Dublin vampire.
Hello, I'm Eve McDonnell, and this is my book Elsetime, publishing September 17th by Everything with Words. I'm going to tell you a story about a young mudlark, a boy who digs up long lost and forgotten things from the muddy foreshore of the River Ocean. Treasures, he named them, and his name was Needle. Chapter 1. Needle's longest nail was on his little finger, carefully nibbled into a point and perfect for rescuing. He reached down to the mud, faced his palm skyward, and hooked the hidden treasure in one swift move. Schmuck! It was a slow sound, and if Needle tried to make it, he had to pop his lips open once he had done the M bit. It made a kind of sucking noise, and Needle reckoned if it had a colour, it would be purple. That's what he always heard when he wiggled things free from the soggy mud. Fine work, Magpie. It be a ring of sorts. Needle spat on it and rubbed it gently against the leather strap of his satchel. Gold! It twists round twice on top, see? He held it up close to Magpie's beak as she tiptoed around him. And I be having you know, it has 4 claws that once held a fancy gem. He placed it in the palm of his hand. A painful shock of cold hit where the muddy treasure lay. He closed his eyes and waited to hear its story. Somewhere inside, perhaps in the beat of his heart, he could feel it stirring. He stuck out his chest, stretched his neck high, and put his free hand against the crook of his back. Easy this one, Magpie. I see 3 girls paddling by the river's edge on a hot day, acting like they be doing something they should not. He sneaked a peek at his audience of 1, and his lips stretched wide into a proud smile. They be throwing pebbles, trying to down bread that was thrown for the gulls, and the girl dressed in blue threw a good one, but the darn ring flew off with it. She didn't even know it was gone. And I'd be telling you more if the ruby were still in it. He opened his eyes, threw the ring in the air, and caught it again. Happened 40-odd years ago at least. To thank his bird for finding it, Needle stretched a worm from a tuft of frosty grass, taking care not to break it, and offered it whole. Dad didn't name you a magpie for nothing, you know. You might be a crow, but you be putting real magpies to shame. He studied his crow. Were her cheeks blooming red beneath her feathers? Probably, if only he could find a way to hide his telltale cheeks too. He scraped mud from the ring's band and he held it high, allowing the sharp winter sun bounce off its gold. Mam will be happy. Soon as I put glass in it, this ring will be worth a pot of proper beef stew. And with Dad being away, there might even be some in it for you too, Magpie. The treasure fit his forefinger best, and as the black hum of the waking factories filled the air, his satchel was soon filled with more. 6 pieces of fine china, some copper wire, 2 bent coins, a belt buckle, and a rose-shaped button, each with their own river-swept story. They turned around when they reached the old bakery that overlooked the river and ocean to the right, and where the walls of the town jail towered over the left. Beyond that point was kept for warmer days. The tall walls cast shadow across the foreshore, so on a frosty day, the hidden treasures were just too hard to dig. At least that's what Needle might say if anybody should ask. To tell the truth, with Dad no longer by his side, those bakery thugs were likely to hammer him with thrown bread, the burnt chunks that hurt. Needle squeezed and released his bare toes on the frosty pebbles, and as he slid the ring into his satchel, a sharp pain shot up his leg. Ouch! He grabbed his ankle and he hopped in a circle, only stopping when Magpie cocked her head to the side. No, I am not good. Blasted thing stabbed me so it did, cried Needle. I must be cut to bits. He threw his satchel down in the frozen mud and sat on it, not caring about its fragile contents. Certain there would be blood, he ripped a strip of grey cotton from the bottom of his shirt and folded his leg so the sole of his foot was propped up by his left thigh. With 1 wing beat, Magpie balanced on Needle's knee. Well, there be a thing, Magpie, look at that, he whispered. He scrubbed his foot with the cotton. Not a scratch. But soon the skin began to rise on the fall of his thick-skinned foot. Magpie rested her chin on Needle's arm, hug-like. It be a blister. Needle scrambled onto all 4s with Magpie on his shoulder, searching the floor of frozen mud and pebbles before them. He saw it first. A small triangle of ripped metal had come up to the mud surface for a gulp of air. Heaven knows how long it had been there, smothered and hidden beneath the plodding gulls and the regular tides. This find was special. Needle touched it gently with his forefinger and winced. He sucked his fingertip, despite the dirt, quickly pointed at the triangle and warned his crow with the palm of his other hand to stay away. It was so darned hot. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Darragh McCullough, and I wrote a book all about farming because I am a farmer. I grew up on a farm, milking cows, driving tractors, bringing in the harvest, basically anything to do with farming, so I suppose it's only natural that I love talking and writing about it too. Because there's always interesting things happening on farms. That's why my friends love hanging out here, even if they're just my feathered ones. So when somebody said to me, hey, why don't you write a book all about farming? I went, that's a great idea. So whether you're into how crops grow, or the enormous machines that are used to sow and save them, or the minutiae of nature and the importance of every aspect of our environment. Or how farmers are adapting to a changing climate by using the latest technology like these solar panels here. It's all here in the Great Irish Farm Book. Now, I'm going to give you a little sneak preview. Irish farmers' secret weapon is grass. They can grow it better than almost anywhere else in the world and almost all year round. Just ask whoever cuts your lawn. This makes it the cheapest and most common feed source for our livestock. The challenge for farmers is how to spread the supply of grass throughout the year, since there's always a huge burst of growth during the summer, but hardly any during the depths of winter. And this is a problem, of course, because animals still need to be fed during the winter months. However, farmers have some tricks up their sleeve to stretch out the surplus grass to last throughout the winter. Traditionally, this was done by making hay, which relies on a good week of sunny weather to dry out the grass, which preserves the feed value inside. The problem, of course, is that a week of sunny weather is never a given in an Irish summer. If the hay gets wet during the drying process, it turns mouldy and is no good for feeding to animals. Today, silage has replaced hay as the most common feed source on farms. The farmer uses the natural acidity of the grass stored under airtight conditions to pickle and preserve it like a jar of pickles, I suppose. It's this acidity that creates that lovely sharp smell when you're near a silage pit or bales. At least it's a lovely smell if you're a farmer.
Hi, my name is Sally Caulwell and I am going to talk a little bit about working on the Great Irish Farm Book with Darragh McCullough. When Gill got in touch and asked me to collaborate on this book with Darragh, I was absolutely thrilled. I think my favourite part about the project was that Darragh would send me these really interesting Word documents full of information about different breeds of cattle and sheep breeds and all about like what crops would grow at different times of year and everything. And for each page of the book, I would really take what I wanted from his like amazing amount of information and I would distill it down. So I think it was a huge learning curve for me because I would research a lot of what he sent over. I'd research it visually and pick out the most interesting visual cues and I'd work from there. First of all, I'd sketch. I would sketch the different breeds. I'd sketch them by hand and I would take some shots with my phone and drop them into my computer. And from there, I would start to draw and I would distill my sketches down to very simple shapes. I wanted the book to be simple. I wanted kids to kind of understand the forms of the animals and understand the shapes of the leaves of the different crops and how I wanted them to have a sense of how everything might look, but I wanted it to also be simple for them so they could understand it at its most basic level. So that's really why the book is kind of bright and punchy and colourful and hopefully engaging for children.
Hello, I'm Marianne McShane, and my first book, Rónán and the Mermaid, was published this spring in April. I'm from Bangor, County Down, and there's an old legend about Bangor. St. Comgall founded the town back in the 6th century, and the legend says that one day one of Comgall's monks caught a mermaid in his fishing nets and she was brought to shore. Well, I was fascinated by this story and I imagined that it was a young foundling boy, Rónán, who caught the mermaid. And this is his story. So I'd like to read you a little bit from the beginning and let you have a peek inside of the gorgeous illustrations by Geordie Solano. Long ago in Ireland, when fairy folk dwelt in the hills, and merfolk swam in the seas, saints and holy men lived in little beehive huts dotted along lonely shores. These huts of wattle and thatch were the first abbeys. The ancient abbey of Bangor lay nestled on the edge of the Irish Sea. There the monks worked and prayed, their companions the seagulls flying on the winds, and the seals basking on the rocks. One day, After a wild storm, Brother Declan was searching for driftwood when he came upon a circle of seals keening softly on the sands. In their midst lay a young boy, wisps of seaweed tangled in his hair, and his eyes closed tight. He was wrapped in a shawl woven from seagrass, and a silver ring glistened in his outstretched hand. Declan looked up the beach and down, but there was no one in sight. He gazed over the water and glimpsed a flash of gold that shimmered by the great grey rocks. The old monk rubbed his eyes and looked again, but saw only white foam and swirling waves. The lines in his forehead deepened as he remembered the old tales of mermaids and seal people. He gathered the boy in his arms, slipped the ring into the pocket of his cloak, and hurried back to the abbey. "I found him with the seals," he told the curious monks, and saying no more, he laid the boy on a bed of rushes and tucked the shawl around him. Brother Finbar kindled the fire till it crackled and sparked, and hung a basin of milk over the flickering flames. Brother Kevin unlaced his pouch of healing herbs and sprinkled a handful onto the frothy white bubbles. The room warmed with the scent of sage and rosemary. Abbot Comgall himself dipped his fingers in a cup of holy water and blessed the child. Declan blew gently on the milk to cool it and held a spoonful to the boy's lips. With the first sip, the colour returned to his cheeks. With the second, he opened his eyes. With the third, he eased himself up. He glanced wildly around and began pulling and tugging at his clothes. And then he sank back on the rushes and sighed in despair. Declan dug deep into his pocket and held out the ring. The boy's eyes widened. He reached for the ring and clasped it tight. He turned it over in his palm and he wondered at the tiny L engraved upon it. "She gave it to me," he said, "the lady with the golden hair." And he told them his name was Rónán and that he'd been fishing with his father when the storm blew in. They turned back to shore and tried to outrace the wind, but the waves caught them and tossed them out of their boat into the cold, wet darkness. My father could hold me no longer. I was swept from his arms. And then the lady came. I thought it was a big fish, but her hair was long and golden. And she sang to me till we reached the shore. Rónán's eyes closed and his voice grew softer. She pressed the ring into my hand and told me that one day I would help her.
Hiya, I'm Sheena Quinn and I'm going to read from a new book which is by myself, Sheena Quinn, and Margaret Ann Suggs, and the book is entitled Holy Shocking Saints. Travel back in time to ancient Ireland when the country was ruled by high kings battling for land. Pirates and raiders invaded villages and towns, and wild beasts roamed the mountains, lakes and seas. Discover the amazing deeds and miraculous feats of 12 Irish saints. Read about these explorers, pioneers, hermits, healers, mystics and mermaids. Find out why Ireland is known as the land of saints and scholars. Who were these 12 incredible people, some as young as 15, who left a lasting legacy on Ireland and other parts of the world. Our saints and their remarkable deeds can be seen through relics, statues, holy medals and stained glass windows. Their names are found across the country, in local towns, football clubs, schools, cathedrals and even mountains. When we think of Irish saints, we often imagine them as being holy, either deep in prayer or helping other people. What many of us don't know is that these saints were either brave or bold or shocking in their deeds, or shocking things happened to them. Covering the country and travelling abroad, Irish saints became known worldwide. The stories of these saints have been passed down to us from our ancestors through storytelling, folklore and ancient texts. Some stories are true and some might be exaggerated and made up completely, but they were all quite shocking. St. Bridget, also called Bride and sometimes known as Breed. She was also called St. Bridget Mary of the Gale, Virgin of Europe, or the patron saint of spring. Her feast day is the 1st of February, and the places most associated with her are in Leinster. Her dates are circa, which means about in Latin, 451 to 523 CE, which is Common Era. Many millennia ago, when Ireland was covered in forests and wild beasts roamed the land, a young woman refused the path chosen for her and chose instead to lead a spiritual life. Her decision had a profound impact on Irish spirituality. Bridget is one of the 3 patron saints of Ireland. She's the most popular female Irish saint. Many opposing myths surround her, but most tell of her boundless energy and her brilliant mind. Bridget shares her name with an important Celtic goddess, and some believe she is the goddess. The Celtic festival Imbolc, which is the same date as St. Bridget's Day, is the 1st of February, celebrates the coming of spring. On this day, crosses are woven from rushes in St. Bridget's honour. They are placed in homes throughout Ireland to bless and protect them. Bridget was a remarkable woman with a vocation. She was a chieftain's daughter who refused the hand of many eligible men in order to follow her faith. Her mother, Brocessa, is thought to have been a Pictish slave from Scotland, and her father, Darragh, was a pagan Scottish king of Leinster. From an early age, Bridget had a spiritual calling. She loved animals and had a natural connection with them. Once she even trained a wild fox to do tricks and presented him as a gift to the King of Leinster. The king was entertained by the fox and impressed by Bridget's spirit. Bridget followed her vocation and became a holy woman. She founded her principal monastery under an oak tree on the site of a pagan shrine to the Celtic goddess Bridget in County Kildare. Her reputation as a healer spread across the land. In no time, hundreds of holy men and women travelled far and wide to settle or seek refuge in her monastery. When Bridget needed more space for her growing monastery, she came up with a clever plan. She asked the King of Leinster to provide her with fertile land. He agreed to give her as much land as her cloak would cover. The king was shocked and amazed when her cloak grew and grew and grew and grew, covering acres of land now known as St. Bridget's pastures. Today you can find many holy wells and places of pilgrimage dedicated to her all over the country. Did you know that St. Bridget's magnificent gold shoe is on display in the National Museum of Ireland? She is represented by a number of symbols, including an oak tree for Kildare, a cow for St. Bridget's pastures, and St. Bridget's cross. A cathedral round tower and a high cross were built in a place of St. Bridget's Monastery in Kildare. And Kildare is the Irish for Church of the Oak. Stories and legends about St. Bridget inspired many artists, including the poet Seamus Heaney, who wrote the beautiful poem The Closed Shrine as a love letter to his wife Mary, comparing her strength with that of Bridget's.
Hi, my name is Sinéad Burke. I am an author and a disability activist. It feels kind of strange to say that I'm an author. There are times when I don't really believe it, but I have a book called Break the Mould that is going to come out very soon. So yeah, my name is Sinéad and I am an author and a disability activist. I love books. I love stories. I think stories have the power to change the world. And I guess in many ways, that's the reason why I wrote a book and a story of my own. Not just because they have the potential to change the world, but because, well, who gets to write stories? Who gets to feel seen and heard in the stories that are out there in the world? That thinking comes from, well, an experience I had when I was in school. As a student, not a teacher, because I'm also a teacher. But I can remember being in primary school and going up to the classroom library and looking through the books, wanting to read every single one of them, but also knowing that the people that were drawn in the illustrations and the characters that were in all of the stories, they didn't look like me. Their lives were completely different to mine. And whilst that was brilliant to explore and to learn about and to research, I wanted to be part of those stories too. When I was a teacher, I thought that things might have changed. And they did, in some ways. There was greater representation of lots of different types of people and bodies and religions and experiences. But still, there were very few stories about people who looked like me, and even less of stories about disabled people, written by disabled people. So, earlier this year, when the world stopped in some ways, I thought maybe it's time to write that story. I didn't know if I would have the skills or the ability to do it, or if I would be able to do it in time, but it happened. And now that book is a real thing. It was hard to write. It's rooted in so much of my experience of being a teacher and feeling different and often being the only person in a room who looks like me. But the story isn't about me. Break the Mould is about giving children, or adults, or anybody, but particularly children, the tools and the skills that they need to feel comfortable in their own skin, to realize that we are all different. And that's not something to erase or to feel embarrassed about or to not talk about. What makes us different is what makes us who we are. And whilst my difference, and perhaps some of the most challenging things that I experience, is obvious to the rest of the world, for others, what makes them different is not. But trust me, there is nobody who is not different. This notion of a perfect person, it doesn't exist. And it's the fact that we're all different. That's what connects us. For me, success for this book will be a child picking it up and for the first time feeling seen and heard in a story. Maybe throughout the pages, they'll learn a little bit of Irish Sign Language, or maybe British Sign Language, or maybe they'll learn more about Louis Braille. But actually, what I want most is for children and adults to learn that we shouldn't change who we are for the world. We shouldn't modulate our personalities or feel like we have to fix ourselves to fit in. The world should change for us. Society should be more accepting, and buildings should be more accessible, and we should be included in every story. After reading Breaking the Mould, I want children to learn and understand that they are enough, just as they are. And they have the potential to achieve whatever it is that they dream. Their pathway to achieving that dream might be different to mine, might be different to yours. But it doesn't mean it's not possible. I hope that Break the Mould touches the minds and hearts of the next generation and really shapes what they believe they can do. I hope it makes a difference to you too.
Hi, I'm C.G. Moore, otherwise known as Chris, and I am the author of Follow. So Follow is my debut, and it follows Cal on his journey to self-discovery. Cal is gay, he's 16, he comes out to his mum and his dad, and it doesn't really go well, and he's really just trying to figure out who he is and why people are having this kind of adverse effect to him being gay and what that means for him. So there's kind of issues around bullying and mental health, family, and as he tries to kind of find that self-love, he ends up going on all of these dates with these really bad guys, provides a lot of humour with the grittiness, and it kind of leads him to a bad place where he needs to kind of figure out who he is and kind of build himself back up again. So I'm going to read you a quick clip, or not even clip, a quick reading from the book, from chapter 1. Chapter 1, Explosive Temper. Chop, chop, chop. Mum, can I speak to you for a minute? Mum was chopping carrots. Chop, chop, chop. Is it important? She responded. Yeah, kinda. Chop, chop, chop. Well, if it can't wait. I don't know the easiest way to say this. Chop, chop, chop. I guess what I'm trying to tell you is chop, chop, chop. I'm trying to tell you that I'm gay. Chop, chop, ear-splitting scream. Mum, shit, 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 Mum, are you okay? get me a tea towel, get me a bloody tea towel. So that's the clip. Kind of has quite an explosive opening about the book. We've gotten some really, really great quotes from other authors, including Catherine Evans, Sue Wallman, and Simon James Green, that said that it was a reminder that LGBTQ kids still face prejudice. It's done with humour and hope and the promise that things do get better. So that was an amazing quote from UK YA author Simon James Green. If you want to find out more, you can find out more online. It's Fallout by C.G. Moore. Thank you so much for letting me speak at the conference, and I hope everyone enjoys. Happy reading.
Hi, my name is Amy Bond, and my book is Morgana Mage in the Robotic Age. This is my debut novel. It was due to be published in June, but due to world events, which I'm sure you're all well aware of, it has been postponed to January 2021. I'm very excited. So I don't have a physical copy yet, but hopefully somewhere on screen now. So Morgana Mage is a witch girl living in the future, where magic folk live in the open, though on the fringes of society. But Morgana doesn't want to be a witch. She wants to be a part of the city that she can see below their mountain village. She wants to be at the centre of this world of technology and robots, and she sets out to make her dreams come true. She gains a place at one of the city schools and sticks it out despite the hostility that surrounds her, though she does make a friend in Jonathan, who shares her passion for all things robotic. And together they decide to create a robot of their own. Morgana also discovers that she may have more magical powers than she initially realised, but unlike any other witch or warlock before her, she can control metal. Turns out this comes in very useful when she and Jonathan accidentally unleash a super robot on the world, who is bent on turning humans into the servants of their robot overlords. But Morgana is willing to fight for humanity. When the grown-ups of the world can't put their differences aside, she leads a group of magic and city kids to save the world. So now I'm just going to read a short passage from my book. So this is from the first chapter, and Morgana's had a disastrous magic lesson, and her mother is telling her that she needs to try harder. "I'm already trying my best," Morgana mumbled. She stuck her spoon in the stew and stirred it glumly. "Everyone's so mean about my magic though, either laughing me or judging me. It's not very motivational." "See, this is why I'm trying to help you," said Morgana's older brother Turlock, who had just arrived in, wrestling with the squirrel he was trying to persuade to sit in the hood of his cloak. "You should take advantage of having a brother who's in line to become a village elder." Elders of the community were any witches or warlocks who had familiars. Animals chose magic folk as companions very rarely, but Turlock convinced himself every other week that some creature had taken a shine to him. This squirrel was the latest, now getting tangled in his brown curls as he tried to escape. Morgana was impressed that her brother managed to continue. "I'll help you improve your magic. Everyone will treat you better when they see you're just like the rest of us." "But what if I'm not like the rest of you?" thought Morgana. She knew her brother wanted to protect her, help her be happy, but the only way he solved this was making her like everyone else. Even her own brother couldn't accept her as she was. Her father came in from feeding the animals. "I'm going to have to head down to the city this afternoon for some potion supplies," he said. "I was thinking perhaps Morgana could come with me." Morgana raised her head from the table eagerly, but tried to keep her face as composed as possible. She knew it wasn't something she should be excited about. If anything, a trip to the city would generally be considered a punishment, as it meant having to spend time surrounded by the city folk who hated them and their unnatural machines. But the city always fascinated Morgana. She knew it shouldn't, but it did. She had already been planning to try disappear into the forest to avoid the humiliation of the afternoon's magic lesson. She had a favourite tree that gave her the best view of the city below. She could spend hours gazing down, imagining a life where it didn't matter that no spells worked for her. She hardly believed that she was going to visit for real. If her mother would agree, that is. Now luckily Morgana's mother does agree to the visit to the city, and Morgana starts off on her adventures. So obviously everyone loves a magic book, and who doesn't enjoy a good robot story? So I think combining the two creates something even more exciting. It also allows for the exploration of issues around the conflict between the technological world and the natural world represented by the elemental magic of the witches and warlocks. The robot uprising raises that classic sci-fi trope of the powers and dangers of artificial intelligence. But I think the heart of the story is really Morgana looking to find a place for herself in the world, while staying true to who she is and what she wants for her life. Something that all kids can relate to, and grown-ups too. So the inspiration for the story came from me really just daydreaming about whether I'd prefer to be a witch or to live a life surrounded by robots who could carry out my every whim. And when I started considering this, I found that often when I was reading books with witches performing spells, I would think, actually, I do have an app for that. The great science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke said, "The most advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And it's really a thrilling way to look at the world where your smartphone is really a magic wand. And I might leave you with the question of whether you think you'd really be able to swap one for the other.
Hi, my name is Caroline O'Donoghue. I'm the author of the forthcoming YA series All Our Hidden Gifts, out with Walker in February 21. Because that's still a little bit away, I don't actually have my proofs to read from. So I'm going to try something slightly different and just try and go off book. My book, All Our Hidden Gifts, is a story set in Ireland. The protagonist is called Maeve, and she is a kind of a slightly lonely, adrift, kind of troublesome, kind of doesn't do so well in school girl, and she is really in limbo at the time that we meet her. What she does find, though, is that through a kind of inadvertent bad detention, hitting a teacher with a shoe incident, she finds a set of tarot cards deep within a kind of a spooky school closet. Now, this sort of changes her life hugely. She, first of all, for the first time ever really, she's good at something. She can read tarot cards with really very little help. She kind of learns how to do it by sort of looking at YouTube videos in an afternoon. So I'd like to prove in this video that you don't need a whole afternoon to learn tarot. Actually, I think you only need 2 minutes. So I have one of my decks of tarot cards here. This one is very, very special to me because it's actually illustrated by Lisa Sturl, who did the American cover for All Our Hidden Gifts. There are 78 cards in total, and they are sort of built up of two sets, really. So the set that you might be more familiar with is called the Major Arcana. There's the Major Arcana and then there's the Minor Arcana. The Major Arcana is all these kind of things. We've got the Fool, we've got the Magician, we've got the High Priestess. We've got these like big characters. Death is in here, Satan is in here. And they are sort of the classic cards that you would be used to seeing in films. So really, you take any of these cards, like the Lovers, it's like 2 lovers. And like, all you need to really know there is that it's about sort of harmony and balance and compassion and everything that you yourself already associate with the term lovers. So these cards, super easy to figure out, like the Hermit. What do you think that means? It means you need to be a hermit for a while. So that stuff you can really feel your way with. And most people learn the Major Arcana really, really quickly. The thing people tend to struggle with is the Minor Arcana. It has wands, it has cups, it has swords, and it has pentacles. And now, you might already feel like that's a lot of information, but actually I've always found that you can sort of head, shoulders, knees and toes it. So, okay, the swords are the suit of air and they're the suit of the mind. So everything that's to do with swords is going to be about sort of anxiety, about study, about sort of all these things in your head that you can't necessarily control and find hard to master. Sleepless nights, sort of feeling bound by things. It's sort of all that mental process. That's swords. So that's the suit of the head. And then right then we've got the suit of the heart, which is cups. Water, emotion, friendship, love, all that stuff, all to do with cups. Then we've got the suit of the loins. And it's to do with ideas and animus and fire and drive, creativity, doing new things. You get me. That's through the loins. And then we end with pentacles, the suit of the feet, and the stuff that keeps you grounded, sort of commerce, business, material things, Excel spreadsheets, the works. And so they're the 4 suits that make up life, really, everything. And each of them, just like in a normal deck of playing cards, they will have 1 through 10, and then a page, a queen, a page, a knight, a queen, and a king. What you got to think about it is that 1 through 10 is basically like a whole journey. It's leaving home. It's like, it's a hero's journey in literature. It's like you leave home, you meet the people, things get bad for a while, things get even worse, then they get slightly better, then you learn something about yourself, and then you come home the victor. It's the exact same thing. These are really just, this is why they help so much as a novelist. They're really just plot beats going along the way. So that was my introduction to tarot. I hope you found it useful, or at least interesting. Maybe you can take your newfound tarot skills and use them to enjoy my book, All Our Hidden Gifts, which has quite a lot of tarot inside of it.
Hello there. My name is Donn Coulter-Crattenden, and I'm really happy to say out loud that I'm a children's author and illustrator now that my first book has been published. I come from Darragh, but live in London, and I also have a cottage in Ramelton in Donegal, where I spent a lot of time illustrating Bear-Shaped. And so I am therefore really chuffed that you've asked me to be one of your new voices. And so thank you for that. And so I'm going to just read you a little bit from the beginning of the book. I'm not going to spoil it for you by reading it all through. Jack and Bear were best friends. They did everything together. They went everywhere together. Jack carried Bear in his school bag. He carried him in his rucksack. And he carried him in his arms. Bear was special because he made Jack feel brave. Sometimes when people spoke to Jack, he felt too shy to even look at them. So he would hold Bear in front of his face and talk through him. Bear was fine with that. Sometimes, when Jack was nervous about trying something new, Bear would try it first, so Jack knew that it would be okay. Bear was fine with that too. When Jack wanted to be away from people and noise, he and Bear would make a secret den for their own quiet time. They would read together, snuggle together, and just be. At bedtime, Jack would show Bear how to join the stars to make pictures like dot-to-dot puzzles in the sky. Bear thought Jack was very clever indeed. He really wasn't like any other Jack in the world. He was Bear's Jack. Over time, all the love, cuddles and adventures that Jack shared made Bear's fur beautifully shaggy and soft. He really wasn't like any other bear in the world. He was Jack's bear. One morning, Jack and Bear got up early and they spent the whole day at the park. And sometime in the middle of that very special day, Bear disappeared. Jack didn't know when exactly, or how exactly, or where exactly. Bear was just gone. Now I hope that you read the rest of the book and find out what happens.